So I don't even know how to introduce you anymore. I mean, you could go all the way back to, when you're a young man, MIT's first neural net company, maybe a little bit before its time even, but 23 companies later, founder and chairman of EverQuote, public company, spending mostly, I would say 99% of your time on AI, maybe 1% of your time running around, getting exercise in. So like, how do you even introduce yourself before we talk about what's happening in AI?
Oh God, there's so many ways, but the thing I really care about, Ilya Sutskever just did an interview the other day, and they were asking him about future algorithms in neural networks, and he, as part of his answer, said, backpropagation, the only algorithm that really matters. I was like, oh my God, if you asked me in 1986 when backprop was invented, if somebody, 30 plus years later, 40 years later would be saying the only algorithm that matters, I'd be like, oh my God, it's been pretty wild to watch it evolve over the years. But it's amazing to me how much, the world is changing at an incredible clip because of AI, and under the covers, it's the original backprop algorithm with really 4 or 5 innovations that are just tweaks layered on top over 40 years. So.
It feels like it was overnight, but it was 40 years in the making, or even longer than 40 years in the making, which feels good. So you have an interesting lens. I love to ask you this question, which is, you are on public boards, but spend most of your time on sort of frontier AI technology, investing in that area, thinking about what's coming next. So how do you advise your own companies that you're on the board of, your friends that are board members? How do they tackle this like broad category of like AI adoption? We need budgets. Like, break it down. Like, what do you say when you're at the bar and they're like, give me the
great question. It's technology gets richer, deeper, wider every single day on an exponential curve, and a lot of people underreact to that. You have to declutter your life like crazy, and I've been trying to coach a lot of people on the boards and in the companies, like, pay attention sentence by sentence, word by word. Is this next sentence, is this politics? Is this bureaucracy? Is this overhead? Or is this relevant? And, think like Elon Musk, whittle it down to the facts and the operations and the real forward progress, and then try as hard as you can. Like, this week, hey, our 2022 is getting audited. This is going to require thousands of hours of fact. Like, great. Get it off my plate somehow, so we can keep moving forward, because AI is not going to wait,
right,
and technology is never going to wait. So a big part of it is being really, really conscious. And I tell everybody, spend 10% of your time thinking about how you spend time. You can always find ways to optimize, reduce clutter, and increase your efficiency. So commit to spending that time. So many people I know get drawn into things. They get pulled in, and they feel like they're working really hard. But if you step back 5 years later and say, do you want that time back? They say, oh God, I wish I could have that time back. Well, be conscious of that in the moment. So that's part of it. I mean, you're right. I'm on a public company board where I'm the controlling shareholder. Right now, I think I'm on 12 other boards, and then we're looking at probably 20 deals a week in the venture funds, but cannot afford to fall behind in AI core technology. None of us can. You got to find the time to do that. So we have a whole team here that does an incredible job of synthesizing and whittling down and getting it down to the most important salient innovations, so that I can be efficient in that as well. But
you've talked a bit about this sort of middleware application of AI for almost being applicable to all countries as well, but definitely companies. And so talk about, are you actually seeing this being implemented? Are you actually seeing sort of middleware AI applications affecting enterprises?
Well, there's no doubt that the technology is improving. If you look at the MMLU benchmarks, or the math benchmark recently, which, if you surveyed AI experts, like really top experts 2 years ago, on whether an AI would be able to get a 75% or higher score on the math benchmark, I think it was maybe 5% said yes, 95% no. And then suddenly it happened, and it's like, what? So it's moving faster than even the experts think it can move. And then if you look at the percolation and out into all the use cases, it's bottlenecked all over the place. So if I go to a random board member or CEO of a Fortune 500 company and say, where have you deployed AI? 98% chance they say nowhere significant yet. Or how much of the code in your IT operation is written with AI now? And they'll be like, virtually none. Is there any reason for that? No, it just came on so quickly, and getting it to market has all kinds of friction and bottlenecks, and it's all cultural, it's all momentum. There's no fundamental reason for it, but getting people to move, not easy. And you know this, you deal with it every day.
Yeah. Sid, so you were probably one of those people we should have been asking 2 years ago. Were you in the 95%? Were you surprised by the ramp on here, or were you in the 5% of you saw this on-ramp and growth of the transformer technology coming?
Well, we've been to be honest, there are some things that even surprise us who spend time with this day and night. But for the most of it, we've seen this evolve for a while. Before there was GPT-3 that really took things by scale. We had GPT-1, GPT-2, and the paper really that changed everything. As you mentioned, there are a few algorithms that really matter. That one big paper was in 2017, where you had attention is all you need. And that really has evolved, with the transformers architecture, and we can see what GPT and Claude can do today. So I think the pace at which this is changing is really phenomenal. And then it also brings me to an important point about the techniques that have evolved, right? So you mentioned MMLU, and then there's ArcAGI, there's a lot of other benchmarks out there that people are really excited about. But the reason these models are able to do well on those is because fine-tuning is so cheap. To create a foundation model, I need terabytes of data, and I need to spend, I think Meta spent about $20 million training Llama 3.1.
Yeah.
So I need that much money, I need that much compute. But to fine-tune, I need megabytes of data.
Yeah.
And I only need maybe up to tens of dollars or maybe up to $100, depending on how much data you have.
Yeah.
So that is an unlock, because now I can have specialized models that work on math problems. I can have models that are catered to what the finance industry needs, which is things that we've done. So a few fundamental and phenomenal techniques and algorithms have been the unlock in the space. And the hard part is which paper, as we read it, is going to be the next big unlock.
Yeah. At the same time, you have all these kind of foundational ideas. You also have all these around the transformer or liquid AI, either way. Yeah, around the edges improvements, which are really cool too. So I was just talking to the team over here. If you prompt like an image generation AI, Stability or Midjourney, or code generation or text generation, and you don't like what you get back, and you just say, do it again for me, it comes back with something different. You ask it 5 times, 10 times, and you get something really good. And anyone who thinks, well, this is AI, why can't it just figure it out? It's like, well, if you look at the way the actual underlying models work and you really understand them, you'll know why it can't just do it internally. But reprompting it works really, really well. And how can you get that to market? But you can get a dramatically better result in front of the user with RAG or with a reprompting process and some guardrails. And suddenly you're looking at a massive difference in the user experience. And so those ideas are really cool too. I think those will be around for a long time.
Yeah, we're starting to see that.
Technology
become quite popular. Yeah. And the ability to actually do that before the user sees it is sometimes quite interesting. And we're seeing some recent papers, LLM as a judge, which not super recent, but sort of becoming much more popular even in the last 2 months. And then the ability to focus on what do we do in an inference, and can we do that 4 or 5 times, and just exactly what you're saying. So those techniques are really how we're going to get, in my mind, from transformers towards really powerful products that are in the consumer's hands.
What's really, really cool to me these days too is distilling these models. So the ideas and technologies around how you distill them. So here you have Llama 3 405B, so you got a 400 billion parameter neural net. If you just try and run it, you need a whole bunch of GPUs, but you can actually distill it tremendously, really, really shrink it down and keep 98% of the performance. But if you shrink it down and keep 98% of the performance, then you can afford to reprompt it 10 times.
Yeah.
Does that produce a better answer than the big model prompted once? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
So then you get this whole interesting research problem around, okay, what's the right size of distillation versus reprompting process?
And so I
really
imagine
cool
I'm let's say I'm a chief accounting officer, or I lead operations at a major company, and I'm listening to this conversation. I'm like, I can't listen to this every day to stay up on AI, right? well, back to the top, right? Like I'm the COO of Russell 2000. Like, what do I do every week to make sure I'm staying on to it? Do I insource this? Do I go to partners? Like, how do I solve AI within the business?
Well, the talent, war for talent is unbelievable, and everyone wants to join startups. So I think you're far better off finding development partners. So a development partner deal is it's not a vendor and it's not an employee. It's somewhere in that middle ground where you have a deal with a company, usually relatively small, growing quickly, super attractive place to work.
Yeah.
Maybe, in some cases I've seen people say, shit, I really want my son or my daughter or my nephew to work there.
Yeah.
And that's a really good way to kind of tighten up a relationship. Then you're seeing like the inside scoop and they're working with your company.
Yeah.
So something like that is the ideal scenario where you have a true tight development partnership relationship. You're comfortable exposing your use cases, your internal data to your partner because you really trust them. They're comfortable telling you everything they see, all your insights on what's going on, where the innovations are. So that's a very healthy dynamic.
Yeah.
And then usually those that, they're not going to talk about, feeds and speeds and reprompting, but they will talk about, look, I need to know, will this use case work right here, right now, or do I have to wait a year for the technology to catch up?
Yep.
And so understanding that is critical for every corporate, executive or e-staff member.
We've seen the willingness to be open in that conversation is the difference between companies that are able to adopt and companies that are sort of scared. And it's like, we're not going to copy a Russell 2000 company. Like you guys, they're so much bigger than us, right? Like you just fundamentally do often like non-technology related tasks. And so if we're able to come in and sort of understand like, all right, are you selling bits of risk? Are you selling leads? Like what are you trying to accomplish? And how can we sort of infuse ourselves as like your AI partners to come in and sort of like amplify things and ultimately like get bottom line in the same quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters, which is oftentimes enough for these guys to double down on the investment. So it's been quite
totally
interesting.
Agree. Yeah, I think there's nothing really comparable in tech history other than the invention of the internet, and this is easily hundreds of times bigger and more impactful than even that.
Yeah.
But it's the closest analogy that we have. But when you look at the invention of the internet, you've got businesses where if you don't get on it, you're going to be disrupted. You just have to get on it. Then you got businesses where it just adds on to it. Like, hey, we're selling retail. Let's add a website so people can buy there as well. So you've got that same range within AI. So really important to be aware of like, are we truly in danger of being completely disrupted? And we need to be making a huge investment right now, and we need to have all the vendors, development partners, and employees we can possibly get? Or is this going to just reduce our customer service costs by something, our call center costs, our coding costs, by some fraction, in which case we can, adopt it more slowly. Still need to get on it, but adopt it more slowly.
It was interesting. We were chatting last week with Rob Biederman, who's the founder of Catalent, the largest online consulting marketplace. So they have an interesting view of what people are looking for. They think a lot about market landscapes changing, and his perspective was one I haven't heard. So he said, if you think about this like retail when e-commerce came online, right? Like there was 3 approaches when e-commerce happened in your retail store. There was, we're going to go all in and we're going to sell online. We're going to test a little bit and put our menu online, or we're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
And it turns out if you did the first thing or the third thing, you were in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
But it was the folks that like invested a little bit of dollars but never got it right that ultimately just lost. And so is that corollary here in AI? Like, can you afford to just dip your toe in and try something, or do you really have to rethink from the bottoms up like what your company looks like?
Yeah, interesting. I'll give you one case study. I was talking to an exec staff member of a custody bank. I won't name who it was, but it's a top technology expert, top 5 guy in the whole organization, multi-billion-dollar public company, and they have 30,000 people doing various operations jobs that are semi-technical, and a lot of them offshore. And if they sample those jobs and say, can this be automated with AI today? It's 20,000 out of the 30,000 are on the it can be automated today list, which would drop about $4 billion of EBIT to the bottom line. And you're talking about a company that hasn't had any real major change. It's like, kind of elephant scale, sales pace, kind of grinding for 30 years.
Yeah.
And suddenly you've got an opportunity for this massive disruptive increase in profitability. You don't have to do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's just an opportunity.
Yeah.
So how do you think about that?
Right.
Is that urgent? Is that not urgent? It's not an existential threat.
Right.
Custody
You've been around
business
for a
is
while.
very stable.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not going away.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we could drive our stock through the roof, and
Yeah.
I would benefit from that.
Right.
Don't I want that to happen quickly?
Yeah.
And it's the usual incredible insanity of like the opportunity is massive. What's the investment required? It's tiny.
Yeah.
But it's still, in the tens or hundreds of millions.
Yep.
It's not nothing. But it'll drop $4 billion to the bottom line.
Yeah.
Anyone in their right mind would do that this quarter.
Yeah.
Well, we budget annually,
Yeah.
and nobody planned for that, and it'll affect our bonus plan. It's like, wow, it's insane.
Yeah.
But I mean, it makes sense
Right.
because the world isn't designed for this kind of rapid disruptive change, yet here it is. So you run into all those ridiculous roadblocks. And one thing I'll throw at you is the private equity funds love this.
Yeah.
If they can say, well, look, they're not going to do anything with this, I can come in, just buy the whole company, then I can drop in my AI team, AIify all of these operations, get a huge valuation step up, take it public again or whatever. They love that. So those are going to be get partners for you guys.
Yeah, there's no better return on invested capital than this. Like, it's so accretive. So we get a bunch of calls from like MDs from PE firms that are HPS folks, and they basically are like, Sid went to NVIDIA, I'm going to ask them like, what do we do? So like, what are you hearing in these conversations?
I think there's the classic problem that enterprises are facing today, which is we have a ton of data, or we're about to acquire a ton of data.
Yeah.
We want to make sense of it and have an advantage. So how do we do it? So at one end, you have the big firms that have, I would say, really done AI right. One of them is JP Morgan, which has put in like a ton of investment to stand up an internal team with talent, with their models, with technology. And now they have the ability to trade on deals with data that they have acquired over so many years using AI. But now for the smaller shops, all hope is not lost because the technology has advanced, as we're talking at a breakneck pace. And there's a lot more you can do with data today that we could not do maybe even a couple of years ago. So the easiest way to get started, which is also what we advise the private equity firm, is to run a small level proof of concept and take a small sample of the data, see if you're getting to meaningful results, and then go from there. So with that, what you've just done is you've set up an official AI experiment. You've evaluated if it makes sense to operate that in production, and you're already on your way to maybe capturing the benefits of that to your bottom line, no matter how small that is.
We've seen like the POC thing is almost about building the right internal champions throughout the org, and so that's why like we've had a company that the guy was like, oh, we want to do a big project, but it was like, is the board on board? Is everyone on board? It's like, oh no, we'll get them on board. It's like, we're not even going to give you a price. We're not going to do a big project. We're going to do a small project and make you money, and then we'll go into the big one. And so it's like understanding the organizational dynamics and what you can deliver is sort of like half the battle in this situation because the technology is there, the use cases are there. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, and one thing I'll tell you about that too is I've never seen startups have so much access at the CEO level of huge companies. Again, the only analogy I can think of is the internet, but even then it wasn't even close to this. AI is such a big deal, like cover of every newspaper, and it's so real. It's just like it's going to change the world, turn everything upside down. And the byproduct of that is that as a startup CEO, you can often be talking directly to the Jensen Huangs or the Andy Jasseys or whatever, which is just unprecedented.
Yeah.
Normally you'd be talking to a director level person at the best, but you can bypass that. And that's part of that is the supply demand gap. So few people know what they're doing in AI. I think I did that Sam Altman interview about a year ago, and he was estimating 10,000 people worldwide are really doing it. Everyone's talking about it, but 10,000 out of 8 billion are really doing it.
Yeah.
So the supply demand gap is just incredibly wide. Yeah. And the byproduct of that is you can often get directly to the CEO and you can talk about development partnership and we'll do the POC, but it's going to lead to something strategic, not to, a little point solution.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's double click on the development partnership because it sounds like, this is what you've been recommending to companies. What does success look like? How do they pick a partner, right? Like they are both looking for somebody that is small and agile, but not trying to take too much risk. So how do they navigate that?
Yeah, I think, what you're looking for on the buying side is, if you read Innovator's Dilemma, Clay Christensen, all the great ideas are in that book. So it's a good place to start. But hey, can I invest in your company? Do you have an advisory board? Can I be on your advisory board? Is there some structure where if you become NVIDIA, that we're still in touch? You don't forget about me, So, what do you do? How often do you get together? Do you get your other customer CEOs and CTOs together in any kind of a round table? And if you can say yes to any of those, then you're like, okay, this is much more of a development partnership. And so what I'm willing to do, normally I would give you a little bit of data and I would ask you to prove yourself, but I'm going to open up the floodgates of information, bring you in to meet my top, divisional executives, and have you look at all the places you might be able to add value. Because you're a development partner, you're not just a little vendor to me. But in return for that, I really need you to keep me in the loop. And so you're going to be hiring incredibly talented people. You're going to get early access to things like Liquid AI or whatever else is going to change the world. I need you to keep me on your speed dial and tell me about those things, because at the end of the day, when you're talking to that customer, they're trying to benefit their company, but they're also trying to benefit their career. And there's so much moving, investable moving parts going on that those things matter a lot too. And so anything you can do to say, look, we're not going to forget you. You're going to help us get to the next level. We're not going to forget you after the fact.
Yeah, that's actually, we're so close to the CEOs we work with. It's always been a CEO deal for us, which has been interesting. But I think for us, we should double down on that. We should be, we're talking to Jamie and having him as an advisor for us, just to be tied in and close. We should be. There's really no one in Boston that we shouldn't have close connection with over the next 12 to 18 months as we continue to grow. So
yeah.
The
other thing I've seen of more than ever before in history is that all of these customers need an AI team. Yeah. And given where you guys came from, you have access to all kinds of really, really smart, talented people that are 1 or 2 years out of school. They don't know those people. So you often have the ability to place your own AI team into your customer, and then they become your customer inside that entity. So that's a really, really good dynamic.
Yeah, yeah.
And they need it. They need the talent flow.
They're happy to have it.
They're happy to have it,
yeah. Yeah, you might be the most bullish. You and Alex Weisner-Gross might be the most bullish on the rate of AI. We're not that far behind you, maybe a little bit, but where are you at, Sid, compared to Dave? How are you going to debate the rate of progress versus maybe the biggest optimist in the room?
I think it takes more than just one of the traits that we haven't explored is that staying on even in the face of failure. Because not every AI experiment that your firm runs or that you run is going to be successful. Like Gartner recently put out a report where they're estimating that only 30% of the POCs that major companies are running about AI are going to survive. Yeah. Which is true. But does that mean that as a company, in the face of that and in the light of the report that Goldman put out that much of AI is a hype, does that mean that we should give up and not run experiments? So that's where the part about grit comes out, right? So if you think about NVIDIA, where Jensen and his, the team pioneered CUDA, it started way back in 2006. It didn't pay off dividends until maybe 2022 when AI became such a big thing. But the point really is that AI is not something like that. AI is something that you can invest in, and it's much more generous in the return payoff. You can learn about it in the next few months as opposed to years, and the investment isn't as high as CUDA by any means. So what's important, I think, is that you have the ability to run multiple experiments, maybe simultaneously, one after the other, and to make sure that you're always testing against the latest and greatest tools. Because 6 months ago, we didn't have Claude Sonnet. We didn't have Llama 3.1.
Yeah, exactly. This is what drives me nuts, because I think that Ray Kurzweil wrote a great essay, the Singularity University co-founder with Peter Diamandis of Singularity and the whole theory. And he has this great essay on all of his predictions he's made over the years and the fraction that have come true. And there's this huge bias where when something happens after the fact, you're like, yeah, we all know that was going to happen. And when something doesn't happen, like a flying car or a self-driving car, you're like, see, stuff doesn't really happen. The world never really changes. But then you look back at the predictions made at the time, like in your pocket, you're going to have a device connected mobily where you can watch a 4K movie. Like, no way.
Yeah.
Like, no way.
Yeah.
And if you're honest about how you score these things 15 years ago,
you're
like, wow. But what happens is as soon as it becomes real, everyone immediately mentally maps to it. Yeah. and says, yeah, we knew that was coming. A good example for me is speech recognition, where some of my best friends from MIT worked on Victor Zhu's lab, doing speech recognition. That was grinding for 20, 25 years. And it was like, yeah, it's just so hard. You really can't recognize speech unless you're truly intelligent, because very often we skip entire words and you have to fill them. You have to know the meaning. So it's going to be a long time before speech recognition works. Now I just routinely talk, and it just kind of crept in, like Siri kind of half worked, and then suddenly it works. Now you just talk to ChatGPT or Perplexity, never misses a word, knows exactly what you mean. Oh yeah, we all knew that was coming. No, that was like on the radar for the longest time, and it was always 20 years out, and then suddenly it's here.
Yeah.
So to me, the reason I think, so if you read like Leopold Aschenbrenner, the reason that strong AI is imminent is all these exponential projections. To me, that's true, but I think that the self-improving training algorithm is imminent. And if you go back to Ray Kurzweil and singularity, that's really the point in time that matters most in terms of AI accelerating like crazy. And when I look at the innovations in just the neural platforms, the foundation models, they're not really that hard relative to relativity and nuclear physics and everything. These ideas are more experimental. And the idea that the current LLMs, or very soon LLMs, will suggest the next thing to research and try, that's going to happen much sooner than true strong AI. But it's also a more important event, because then the thing suggests its own self-improvements. And assuming you have enough GPUs, and you saw that Meta just bought another 300,000, or pre-ordered another 300,000 for like $10 billion. That's because they're anticipating this. Like, if I have enough compute, then the thing will have suggestions on how to improve itself. And then I'll deploy those inside the box, and the thing it'll accelerate. So, I'm kind of cheering for it being, 5 to 10 years out, not 2 to 4 years out. I don't think we're ready for it yet. And I'm loving this window of time. Like this window of time is the best investment period. And I've known this since I was 14 years old. There's going to be this window where AI can do incredible things for humanity, but it's not a threat yet. And we're living that moment of time, like right now. The absolute best time in the world to do what you're doing, to be investing, is just an absolute golden age. And then nobody knows what happens after strong AI. It's just too freaky to even figure out.
We won't spend too much time worrying about that today. So I think we have this strong belief that it's not just the progression of LLMs, but the structure you're able to wrap around the data to enable these. So share a little bit about our learnings or our perspective.
Yeah, so we've been building in the space for a while now, and the technology has really evolved well. But the art really, where LLM specializes in their ability to assimilate information at a scale that is practically infeasible for a human to have cognizance of, and to be able to translate that meaningfully in the context of a query. And there have been a bunch of techniques that optimize for that. We spoke about fine-tuning. We spoke about the efficiencies in training models. But at the more granular level, you have techniques like RAG and improvements to RAG. And we've seen a bunch of successful solutions being built about RAG. But now, as the space evolves, we're seeing a lot more prominence given to structural enhancements that change the core of how the information is indexed and retrieved. And one of them is graphs that we were just talking about. And we do believe that going forward, a lot of the improvements will come in the way the data is structured. And this is the immediate short term. And we do see graphs being a prominent application there. And internally, we've successfully used that for coding-based solutions, where you can use relationships and relational databases way more efficiently to get answers to specific questions in context. And then this application also generalizes well to what our customers are looking for in the legal, finance, insurance space.
Yeah. Are you using the graph data to change the prompt, or are you actually using it in the fine-tuning as well?
We're using it to index data and then retrieve it. So for example, if I index an essay that has, let's say, a mention of one keyword at some point in it, but I need to understand the reason why that keyword was mentioned. If I just run a baseline query using let's say, vector-based RAG, it won't be efficient in telling me, what is the context of that query, because it's simply trying to reference the OLAP.
Yeah, it's I don't know how much you've played with these million token context windows, but it's just mind blowing what they can do. But then people are abusing the privilege by throwing in entire code repos and saying, okay, here, let me just throw in. You realize that the transformer has no kind of concept of order. Like, the first thing at the front of that prompt window is just as important to it as the last thing or anything in the middle. You're like, well, I just dumped in, half a terabyte of code, and now I'm going to ask you to write the next line. You're like, well, you're really stressing the system a lot more than you need to stress it. You're like, okay. Well, for most of these code modules, they're well documented. All it needs to know is the inputs and outputs. So I can get rid of all that code and I can still do a good job. Well, that takes the stress off the system tremendously, which allows it to do a much better job of writing the code or the SQL or whatever that you really need. And we're nowhere near, we're just scratching the surface of the opportunity there. But it is amazing to me. We have a meeting coming up with the governor on Monday. And one of our interns just took the entire Mass state budget, which is, like that thick, just dumped it into the prompt window and says, where do you think the state could save some money in the budget? And it gives you a really intelligent answer out the other side in real time. It's just incredible what these big prompt or context windows can do. So, but that's no reason to abuse them. You can get even better dramatically better performance if you use them intelligently. So I love what you're saying about using graph data to basically create the perfect prompt, create the perfect fine-tuning process.
Yes. So we've unlocked the ability to do exactly that, to feed it, large repositories with tens of thousands of lines of code and still have the LLMs spit out meaningful code snippets that make our engineers' lives better and give them the ability to complete tasks that would otherwise have taken weeks in a couple of hours.
Yeah. The accuracy just blows away the public market solutions that are available, which has been very interesting. But Dave, what's your closing advice for some of these execs that are looking for a development partner here?
Well, I mean, it's all boats rising with the tide right now. Just probably look more for a personality match than anything else. If you find a company or people that you really like on a personal level, that'll make it. The information flow will be a lot better that way. And then look for teams that can recruit, because no matter how well things go, you're going to be talent constrained in a heartbeat. And if you have a development partner that can bring in talent, you're probably thinking, oh, we're going to spend a couple $100,000, $1 million. That's going to go up. The return on investment will be like nothing you've ever seen. So your desire to do more will go through the roof. If your development partner can keep up with that, then that's a really good thing to look forward to. So that's just off the top of my head, a couple pieces of advice.
Awesome. Thanks for the time, Dave.
Oh, pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Love it.